Cool. It is 6:01. I'm just gonna get started. I am the worst at like sharing my screen and having my computer not explode. So we're gonna see what happens today. Alrighty. So today's session is called Housing Justice, which is a play on words. So thank you very much, Maria, because she gave me that idea. She is wonderful. Oh, grumpy dogs. Oh no. Sorry, grumpy dog. So thank you, Maria, for this awesome play on words for today's presentation title. But this title also plays to the effect and the notion that by recognizing injustice, it's the only way we're truly going to create justice and really house it, quite literally. So today we're going to look at the legal implications of housing insecurity and homelessness. And together we're going to explore some individual stories. We're going to learn about the criminalization of homelessness. I know my girl Jalen knows a little something, might ask you to share. And at the end, we're going to go over some action steps for change. But just before we start, I should probably say, just remember to treat yourself with kindness as we navigate today's content, because none of this is going to be easy to watch or reflect upon. So make sure to take breaks, do something to calm yourself. I hate when people say take care of yourself. I feel like it's just so diminishing because I'm like, clearly I feel like crap. I'm not going to take care of myself. So I like to say, do something to relax yourself. Respect your boundaries, participate as much or as little as you like, and just absorb what you can today. So with that, we're going to get started. Right. So it's just a recap from a couple weeks ago from our friends who were with us. Let's remind ourselves about the distinctions to be made between housing insecurity and homelessness. There's this idea of sheltered versus unsheltered, and we know that for our homeless and housing insecure individuals, the word shelter can't really be taken as literally as most typical people take it. So shelter, the criteria is that it must be safe, livable, and sustainable, which means that it has running water, food, electricity, security, privacy above all. So literal forms of coverage, not all of them are considered shelter, such as tents and cars and abandoned buildings, because they don't have those basic amenities, right? So these are not considered shelter. So typically our homeless individuals will reside in these types of spaces. Again, they're not considered shelter, even though they literally are shelter. But we talked about that last week, so we're pretty comfortable with that concept already. And then on the other hand, housing insecure individuals, they tend to reside in what we call quote unquote proper shelter, in the sense that it's safe, livable, and sustainable for some period of time, even if it's not permanent. And they do this by either couch surfing, staying in hotels, motels, or even living in a homeless shelter. That's still considered proper shelter. And just remember that people can shift between sheltered and unsheltered places, meaning that you can be homeless and housing insecure at the same time. You can be one and then the other, come a few days, a couple missed paychecks. Honestly, it all depends on a situation, and it's very case by case. It works on a case by case basis. So again, we don't generalize, but we do want to make a distinction between the two when it comes to that spectrum and what each side of the spectrum entails. So talking about that idea of a spectrum, I really want you all to choose your experience in these meetings that we have together. I know that sometimes when you're in virtual meetings, especially when you're in classes virtually, you get real tired of doing the same thing that everyone else is doing. So I want you all to be able to engage and realize that there's different ways to learn about housing insecurity and homelessness. So one of the ways we're going to do this is by engaging in one of these virtual conversations. I'm going to paste a few things in the chat so that way you can access these videos of individuals. You can learn a little bit about their stories. I'm going to give everybody 10 minutes to watch a video. So if you have extra time, you can either watch a different video, go to the bathroom, get a snack, take a break, stretch. I know we just began. So if you're rushing to get here, you can take some time to catch your breath, but just give me a couple seconds so I can get all those links for you. And then feel free to watch any video you would like to watch today. right, everybody. So 10 minutes has passed, and we're going to talk about what we saw.
I watched Laura, and her situation was that basically she was in this relationship and it got really abusive to the point where like she got like brain damage from it and it was really bad. So she decided to just walk out and like just take what she had on her back with her because she couldn't take it anymore, which is like fair. Like that must have been a really hard situation. And she's been on the streets of New York. She's been in Times Square for about like 2 years with her dog, and she was like getting interviewed by this man, and he was talking about how, or she was talking about how people treat her when she's just like trying to mind her business. Like she kept saying how she doesn't try to bring any attention to herself. She's like lucky enough to get food stamps, so she doesn't have to beg for like food or anything, and people still treat her like she's causing a disturbance. And they were talking about the whole hotel vacancy in New York, because like New York hotels are like really expensive, but there's like, I think he said like 100,000 vacant rooms in like Manhattan, and they just won't let homeless people stay there even though they have all the space. So I don't know what I would do in her situation. Just like I just can't even imagine having the strength to like keep going after like being beaten so bad that I get brain damage, or just like having to be on the streets for so long. I don't know how she's done it, especially like just with everything that's happened to her in like the few years that she's been homeless. I don't know. It was a lot to think about.
I like watched two. So I watched Delilah and EJ because they're both like 4 minutes, so there was just enough time. So Delilah was like actually like an interesting, I don't know, I just never like thought she kind of just like not chose to be homeless, but she got like kicked out with her roommate and her boyfriend was already like homeless. So she kind of just like ended up doing it, and she said she liked being homeless, that that's like what she wanted to do, that she liked like her nomadic lifestyle, and that she just liked minimalist living. And so I assume that she's still with her boyfriend, so she was like sleeping with him, and it was just something that she kind of was like enjoyed. So it was pretty interesting to see her like perspective on it, and like how, I don't know, she just liked living with just the things on her back, and like that was just her lifestyle. And then EJ had been his parents died in a car accident when he was like 7, and then he got put into foster care, and like his foster parents were abusive, so he ended up just running away, and he'd been homeless since he was 7 years old. And he just like had like a very different like life story, and he just turned 18, so he'd been homeless for 11 years. And he's enlisting in the army, and like he just talked about like how he just tried all his life like not to get too close to people, but not to like stay far away, as to like where people wouldn't look out for him. And it was just, I don't know, it was very interesting, both of their stories, because they're vastly different, but relatively around the same age. And yeah, I don't really know what I would do if I was in either of their situations, but both of them seem to have like incredible strength and stuff.
Here's a question for you all. In terms of survival, what do you think the options are for these individuals? Where to sleep, where to eat, where to get those resources? Remember, we spoke about resources when it came to sheltered versus unsheltered. What do you think some of their survival tactics are? And we can list some of them and just throw them around. But from your experience in speaking with this individual, although we don't know the entire story, what do you think they were doing or are currently doing in order to stay afloat?
Well, I know that Laura had mentioned that she was on food stamps, so she was getting some sort of government assistance, which I'm not sure how she's done that without like just the supplies of a home. So like if people figured out a way to do that, which I'm sure not everyone has the resources to get government assistance, or like the government assistance is usually limited, just like they don't like to give out free things. So I guess that's one way she did it.
I know that for I also watched EJ's video. And I know that for him, he didn't really know. And I think that you can find that in a lot of these people, well, individuals, is that, you know, you don't really know how necessarily, like, you know how to just survive, in a sense of simply living and kind of like, but he even said like he doesn't even know where he's going to sleep tonight. He doesn't know when the next time he'll get food. Um, so it's really this big unknown and just trying to literally stay breathing, the act of just simply living. Or at least that's what I found for EJ. I don't know if this is how everyone's story was, and actually I want to now watch everyone's story. But yeah.
And it's almost crazy how intimate these stories are. You feel like you know these people. And I think that's extremely interesting. And I'm glad that you were all able to pick an experience to sit with. And I'll definitely send you all the links for these so you can watch them. But I also want to revisit these in the following weeks. So maybe every time we do talk about this issue, you can listen to a different story so that you're always shifting between different people and realizing and recognizing that these stories are not cookie cutter. They're very fluid in the sense that people have similar experiences and some people have very contrasting experiences. So just carrying the idea of survival, I asked you all, what would you do to survive? And there were a lot of question marks. There was a lot of I don't know. So I'm going to present you with some survival tactics, quote unquote tactics, that these individuals have relied on. Some of them include sleeping under bridges, sleeping on benches, relying on begging, loitering in areas so that way they can gain some source of revenue from the general public. These are just some of the ways that these individuals have been able to stay afloat. And unfortunately, their survival is considered criminal due to the increasing legislation around anti-homelessness and the discrimination against those who face homelessness and housing insecurity. So despite the lack of affordable housing and emergency shelters that are available across cities, these cities have chosen to criminally punish homeless people for literally trying to survive, doing what any other human being would do if they were in these situations. These cities are continuing to threaten, arrest, and ticket. Yes, ticket homeless people. Homeless people who do not have steady income are receiving tickets in which they have to pay off in order to live in a public space. And some of the infractions include camping bans, sleeping bans, begging bans, restrictions on living in vehicles. If you live in your own car and you're caught at the wrong place in the wrong time, you could get fined. You could get arrested. There's restrictions on food sharing. There are restrictions on loitering and sitting and lying down. There are plenty more. These were just a few of the ones that were the most prominent. If you want to know more about these and you really want to get the numbers and the statistics, I didn't want to give you all the numbers and statistics because we would be here for 3 hours and that's not cool. So if you want to check it out on your own time, I'm going to send you all a link called Housing, Not Handcuffs that talks about the criminalization of homelessness and how we can combat that. But we're probably wondering, how is this system built? How is it constructed? How is it that sitting and lying on a bench because you have nowhere to live has become criminal? And what are the factors that allow it to become criminal? So this is where I'm going to call on my friend Jalen and ask her to tell us a little bit about what she mentioned a couple weeks ago about the architectural discrimination within cities.
So in like bigger cities, there have been a lot of just new architecture when it comes to benches and like other things that like homeless people typically like sit on or lay on to sleep. And within this like architecture, there's like, if you like picture a regular bench, they're like put another handle like right in between so that there's no way that you can sit. And I've seen like park benches that have like little spikes on them. So maybe they're comfortable for you sitting down, but definitely not comfortable enough for you to lay there for a whole night. And all of this has basically just been anti-homeless architecture in order to stop people like from laying down, sleeping in these areas.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, Jalen. That really brings us into this next source that we're going to check out. So as Jalen had mentioned, there are benches that are literally being constructed in order to prevent people from lying down on them or sitting for long periods. Here's another example of what Jalen just mentioned about the armrests for comfort. And you see these tweets and these memes, but there is some reality to them. So let's check out this website where there's a whole list of discriminatory architectural practices in popular cities. And as we navigate through this article, have you seen anything like this in your town, in your city? Is this new to you, or is this something that you're used to seeing? If you've never seen these things before, how do you feel after seeing them now? So let's take a little trip to this website. As we scroll past something, raise your hand if you've seen something like this in your city. I just want to get a gauge of where people are from. I'm from New Haven. I've seen definitely the armrests and whatnot and the slanted benches. So let's see, has anyone seen slanted benches before? And just to get a gauge, and let us know, what towns are you from?
I'm from East Hartford.
Jalen, you're in Granby, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Aubrey said, I'm from Connecticut, but most recently lived in New Haven. Hey, New Haven. East Hartford, Granby, New Haven. And then Maria, what towns have you seen these in?
From the towns I've lived in, I know they have that in Florida, or like where I grew up. It's like Deltona, usually like Volusia County. You can just see a lot of those benches, mostly like in the lower class areas. But I know that in New Britain, Manchester, Hartford, those are three places I've lived before, and they had those there. But I also like lived in Mansfield and Columbia, in those like really like suburban areas, and they didn't have those. So
Alyssa says, I've only seen this type of thing in cities like New York, New Haven, and maybe Hartford. Never see them in suburban areas. Alrighty, let's move forward. Our favorite. We've seen this one, so we'll scroll past it. I'm sure you've seen benches with armrests, and if you haven't, you're living under a rock, probably, and that's okay. Rocks are cozy. It's understandable. Well, let's talk about these rocks. Let's talk about them, okay? That was not planned, okay? All right. Have we seen them? Have we not? Okay, Aubrey says, Maria,
Oh, I didn't know that that's what that was for. Like, I've definitely seen those, but I did not know that that was like the purpose of those. Wow, that's crazy. I thought that was like decoration.
Right, and perhaps it could be both, because as someone who's a native of New Haven, which also means I've been around Yale a lot, I've been around the block and back. There is a lot of cobblestone pathways, architecture, and you're not fooling anybody, okay? We have a very large population of homeless individuals in New Haven, and if you've ever been to New Haven for a day, you know that for a fact, because I've lived there for 20 years and it's not changed at all. So for me, this isn't something I linked initially. I agree with you, Maria. I didn't link those two together, but after realizing how prevalent it is, especially around Yale, it's scary. It's really scary. Spiked windowsills. Now these I've never really encountered, I don't think, but has anybody ever encountered these before? Or even noticed them? No. Oh, Aubrey, yeah. Ooh, can you tell us a little bit about it if you don't mind? You can type it or you can say it, whatever you feel comfortable with. But basically, I know someone who owns high rises in Hartford, and they make excuses that they're for preventing birds from nesting. But birds nest on roofs, not on windowsills. So obviously not the real intent. I think it's so interesting though, because these are things you don't really pick up on, especially in a windowsill. Like, it's so minuscule. And it relates back to the idea that a lot of homeless individuals are referred to, and although it's really derogatory to call them squatters, but that's what they're referred to. And a lot of these spikes prevent individuals from getting into open areas, windows. As you can see, this window looks like it's been plastered over almost. I know a lot of abandoned buildings from where I'm from are not plastered over, so they're pretty much free range for anybody, but I've never seen these spikes, and I rue the day that I do, because that will be a scary time. I think there's something to be said about the way cities are constructed, and also the people who are constructing them, because you think of it, who's going off to get a degree in civil engineering? It's not people that typically have gone through these experiences. So these people that are constructing these cities don't have the understanding of what it is to be homeless, but rather will first criminalize it rather than trying to understand it. So that is very unfortunate. Hopefully the scope of that can change over time. And this was just, I'm sorry. This was interesting. I've never seen a bench like this, ever. It's so blatantly obvious too, like it's almost funny in a way, but it is very interesting. Street spikes. Who's ever seen street spikes? Anybody? No. Never seen them either, but man, you think the lengths that cities go to just to stop homeless people from surviving. And then awnings without rain gutters or protection. I'm speechless, guys. And remember that idea of no loitering, no begging. Typically, people will reside in one spot and they'll beg for money, and this doesn't allow them to do that. And street dividers also takes up ground space for people who are trying to sleep outside. Maria says, I didn't know the plants were used that way. And then Alyssa says, it's honestly ridiculous. If they don't want homeless people on the street, then they should fund them and give them housing. And of course, yeah, honestly, that makes more sense. Maria goes, here I thought it was to make things look nice. And that is also valid. There's a lot of cosmetic features to cities that are more than what they appear on the surface. This is just scary. This one is just a lot. These benches aren't even benches. Alyssa's pissed. Okay. Alyssa's mad. Alyssa, go curb stomp some people, because at this point, Maria said, and that's on period. Oh my gosh. Aubrey goes, I agree. I feel like gentrification makes this way worse too. Of course, people. Alrighty, and we're on the last few ones. And Jalen says they'll allow tents when it makes them money, like for COVID. Ooh, if that is not some truth, speak upon it, Jalen. Speak upon that truth. Tell us some more.
In New York, like there's a whole bunch of like tents that are like, I don't know, they're like see-through, but basically they're so people can dine together and like be separate from everyone. And there's just a lot of controversy about that because, okay, like you'll allow tents so that people can like have the luxury of dining together during a pandemic, but you won't allow tents for homeless people to like live on the side of the street. Like it doesn't really make sense to me, so.
Crazy. And I know we are running out of time very soon, so I'm gonna hop back to the presentation real quick. It's easy to feel helpless and not know what we can do to help or what is being done to help. Alyssa mentioned that it's easier to provide housing for these individuals than it is to try to keep them off the streets, because it is true. There is a huge economic investment that comes with upgrading cities in order to block out homeless individuals. Whereas you can just follow a housing first model, provide them with housing, and then provide them with resources and expect them to then put together their lives after given shelter, which we can talk more about that in a couple weeks. But just for right now, since we're wrapping up soon, I do want to leave us with a little bit of hope. So this may run over time by a couple of minutes. Honestly, if you're willing to stay, please do. But if you have to go, we totally understand. And just know that at the end, I'm going to give y'all some action steps on how to change these things, because although we can't change it overnight, there are small things that we can do. So let's watch this quick recording of Echo Park's homeless community and what they are doing in order to combat the criminalization of their own people.
For people to be out here when there are 200,000 vacant units. But the concept of community and love doesn't die out when you're houseless. For the weeks that you're here or the months that it takes to get you on Section 8, it still doesn't make sense not to have a community. That's not an economic thing. You know, people are still people, and we still need that love that comes from community.
Someone from the city came to relay a message to say we have 7 days before we have to evacuate and leave the park. Where are we going to go?
Welcome to Echo Park, where I've been living for the past 4 or 5 months out here. This is our living room. Yeah. What's up? I was working, trying to find my way in the rat race for a lot of years, going job to job, just enough money to make this month's rent, and then just enough money to find some other month's rent. And I was just living that life nonstop. I was working in a hostel for a few years, and then they fired me and I became homeless.
Back in November of 2019, a group came in who were harassed out of other parts of LA, and they heard about Echo Park Lake being a nice, hospitable place. They came and set up camp, and immediately they were harassed by the cops. You can't be here. You got to get out of here. Multiple attempts by the city with police, park rangers, and sanitation to sweep them out. And every time the community mobilized, 60 to 100 people with signs to surround them and have, the residents leading the way, chanting services, not sweeps.
My name's Paige. I'm an artist and a plant lover. I help start the community garden with everybody here. And it's really part of a bigger initiative of community building, connection, empathy, growth. Yeah. And then you just gotta come back here and water them, and you'll see them grow in maybe a couple weeks. This is my neighborhood, and these are my neighbors. So we're all humans and live here together, and I'm happy to do this together with everyone here.
For those that have come to the park now, as opposed to recent months in the past and before, you may have noticed an increase in tents. And, this is due to COVID. People can no longer afford to pay their rent, whatever life situation they're in. So they make their way out here with nowhere to go. And in here, we accept all people from all walks of life. If you come hungry with no tent to protect you from the elements and nothing to your name, we're gonna get you started. We're gonna get you a tent, get you some blankets and a sleeping bag, get you some food, and we're gonna fix that mindset and remind you that you're not less than, that in fact, nothing has changed due to your economic situation, and boom, get you right back on that hunt to escape this position. And now we have community dinners. Y'all will witness that later tonight.
This is our kitchen. Everything in here is donations. Everything.
We got 2 showers, the one we built and then the one we bought from Walmart. Mayor said he cut the funding for the shelter showers, and then he cut the funding for the mobile shower unit and COVID, so there's no gyms to sign up to take a shower in. So we built one. What we'll do is we'll take all of our bottles that we finish, put it in recycling, and then that way people can turn a profit off of the recycles, making it easier than just going in the trash can to dig for it. We've been able to sort of make an economy with it. Pay people out to run the pantry, so when the donations come, they can set it up in the pantry tent, and when people from all over come needing things like blankets and water, we got someone handing it out to them. And because we're actually here, we know what's actually needed. So what we're trying to do, and we're still working our way towards it, to create an inventory. So then to all the good-hearted folks out there that want to somehow do something about this homeless epidemic, we have better communication of what can actually help.
This is
Alrighty. And just lastly, leaving with a little bit of hope, I'm going to show you all a few action steps that we can take today without having to leave our homes in order to help these individuals. So the first things you can do is get acquainted with the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness. I will send you all these links in an email. I would try to paste them all in the chat, but I am not very tech savvy, unfortunately. So I will definitely send this all to you through the GroupMe, through the email, and we can post this on our Instagram as well. Maria and I can work together to do that, so you have access to these things 24/7 round the clock. So get acquainted with the CT Coalition so that you're helping a local community that's actually doing the same things in a similar way that what these individuals in Echo Park are doing. Also, all the videos that we watched today were, this sounds like an endorsement, this is not a paid promotion, were brought to you by Invisible People TV. So you don't have to donate to them if you can't, but what you can do is follow them on Instagram. Keep listening to these stories. A lot of these stories were recent. You saw some of the individuals had masks on. These were 2020 raw, uncut stories. Be informed so that way you can inform others. And that's one of the greatest action steps you can take today. And the same thing goes for the Echo Park GoFundMe. If you can't donate today, that's okay. You can follow their Instagram at Echo Park Rise Up. Again, this is not a paid promotion. I'm not a YouTuber. These are just things that I think are super important, and having those resources and these action steps can help you not feel that sense of helplessness, because I know that after watching these things, there's a sense of, well, what can I do? I can't help, but there are ways you can help just by being informed. If you have $5 left over and there's a buy one, get one free sale, maybe instead of buying one and getting one free and trying to hit that deal, use that money and donate it to something else. There's ways to allocate funds, but there's also ways to allocate your care and just to pay attention to things that you don't usually pay attention to. And I think a lot of that can happen. You can start paying attention to these things through social media because it'll seep into your feed. You'll start understanding these things. Your friends will start following these pages and understanding these issues. And the very last thing is, there's a very wee, small, tiny petition to end homelessness in America. And yes, it is ambitious. And yes, it is very vague, but it's a petition nonetheless. And even if you feel like you can't do any of these other steps, at least you can write your name on this very small petition and it may even go somewhere. And that's okay. So that's all I have for today. I will stay and hang back for questions, comments, concerns, but I do know that I went over time because I'm not good at time management anymore, and that's okay. But like I said, I'll hang back and you're gonna get all these links, so don't panic. I promise they will be sent to you. But that's all we have for today.
Photo? Question mark.
Oh yeah, photo. Oh my gosh. Yes, you're so right. Let's take a photo. You get to hear the like click on my computer. Okay, we're gonna take a photo. Jasmine. Okay, one. She said no. 1, 2, 3. You heard the click. All right, y'all. So that's all for today. Bye.